I want to talk to you all today about Ezekiel chapter 38, and contained in this passage of scripture, and also in chapter 39, many refer this as to the battle of Gog and Magog. And we're not going to read through this all. I will read a few verses with you because the chapters are quite lengthy, but I encourage you to read them both, chapters 38 and 39 of Ezekiel. Ezekiel 38 describes a future war where an alliance of nations come against Israel. Also, it seems that during or possibly right before the attack on Israel, that they will also attack the land of unwalled villages, which seems to describe not Israel, as some have said, but the United States. This coalition of nations attacking seemed to include Russia, Iran, and Turkey, which are now forming stronger ties with each other. They are coming together in Syria right now, and in general they're forming better relations between each other. They've had some odds between them in the past, especially between Russia and Turkey, but they seem to have mended up things. And again, these are mentioned. I mean, they're referred to as other names in the scripture, but when you take it to modern day terms, it would come out to be Russia, Turkey, and Iran being involved in this end time battle. Also, Jeremiah chapter 51 verse 27 mentions nations going against the daughter of Babylon, which I believe is the United States. And their names correspond to modern day Russia, Turkey, and Iran. Now let's read a few verses from chapter 38. We're going to read verses 10 through 13, and then I'll expound on that for you. It shall also come to pass that at the same time shall things come into thy mind, and thou shalt think an evil thought, and thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages. Notice he says at the same time. In the previous verses he was talking about going against Israel. Now it's like this is another thought, completely different from the previous thought. And thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages. I will go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls, and having neither bars nor gates, to take a spoil and to take a prey, to turn thine hand against the desolate places that are now inhabited, and upon the people that are gathered out of the nations, which have gotten cattle and goods, and dwell in the midst of the land. Sheba and Dedan, and merchants of Tarshish, with all the young lions thereof, shall say unto thee, Art thou come to take a spoil? Hast thou gathered thy company to take a prey, to carry away silver, gold, to take away cattle and goods, to take a great spoil? Very interesting passage of scripture here, and I believe this has been misinterpreted by a number in the past who think this land of unwalled villages is describing Israel. But as we can clearly see from reading the passage, it's talking about a different land completely. At the same time, Gog, which is Russia, led by Russia, actually Gog would refer to the leader of Russia, or even possibly the spiritual force over God. God is like a spiritual force controlling the territory as well. So they will lead an attack on Israel, and they also will attack the land of unwalled villages. at approximately the same time, possibly a little bit before they will attack the land of unwalled villages. And again, although some say this is Israel, it's clearly not Israel that these verses are talking about. Previous verses, yes, it did talk about Israel, but this is something different. And verse 11 says that the nation dwells safely, which should be translated as carelessly. And in Ezekiel chapter 39, verse 6, it uses the word carelessly, describing those that dwell in the isles, which are faraway places from Israel. And this also denotes a sense of overconfidence. This describes the U.S. And also, this verse says it's a nation without walls, bars, or gates. The U.S. has open borders, and none of its cities are protected by walls or fences. Whereas Israel has 417-mile wall of protection from one source that I read. I'm not saying this is totally correct. It could be less or more now, but from this source I read, which was fairly recent, it said 417 miles. And verse 12, the motive is to take a spoil, and the U.S. is rich in cattle and goods. We're the greatest spender or purchaser of goods in the whole world, and we have many goods here as well. Now, verse 12. Oh, excuse me, I just did that one. Verse 13. Sheba and Dedan represent Saudi Arabia, and the merchants of Tarshish likely refers to Europe and especially Britain. The young lions would be the U.S., for the U.S. came out of Britain. Now, instead of protesting against God for invading Israel, as a number of prophecy teachers have stated, these nations are questioning why is God attacking them personally, not Israel. And thereby, with the U.S. unable to respond to attack on Israel, they will have to solely rely on God, who will deliver them from God's attack. Russia would love to have Saudi Arabia's oil and in turn give Mecca to Iran. A likely scenario is that the U.S. would be hit by an EMP strike, which would leave it unable to respond. For those of you who do not know what EMP is, it refers to electromagnetic pulse, and it's a missile that's launched and it explodes a warhead up high above in the atmosphere, and it doesn't do destruction to the cities, but it disables the electrical grid. So that, in effect, could be even far worse, especially if you're not able to respond to it. It's just send us back to the Stone Ages, so to speak. That would be very bad. And of course, this would be a surprise attack. And Russia already had a sub that was spotted a while back off, I think it was in the Gulf of Mexico, and it had been there supposedly for a couple of weeks or so before the U.S. Navy or whoever it was that detected them even knew that they were there. I'm sure they have other subs patrolling the coast as well. Okay, they may also attack Britain and Saudi Arabia too at this time. Now, the timing of these events seems to be at least 3.5 years before the tribulation, because the weapons are burned for 7 years, as it states in Ezekiel. I believe that's in chapter 39. Now, during the midpoint of the tribulation, the Jews have to flee to the wilderness And the millennium begins with a cleansed land. So therefore this timing scenario seems to be the best. Some have stated it would happen at the beginning of the tribulation. Others say in the midpoint. But it seems more likely that it would be at least 3.5 years before the tribulation begins, to allow time for the burning of the weapons. For the Jews seem to be the ones that, although it doesn't state so, but this prophecy is dealing with Israel, so it would seem that the Jews in Israel would have to be the ones that are burning these weapons. Now, as far as the rapture goes, the rapture could possibly be simultaneous as when this war happens. Because I'm sure more than likely nukes will be launched. They could have EMP, but they also would likely send nuclear weapons, especially against Israel during this attack. And it says that Gog's armies, 5/6 of his army, will be destroyed. And a number of people have had dreams of when the missiles come down, the bride goes up. And that is possible. I cannot confirm that, but it is possible that it could happen this way. So keep looking up, for this war could happen any time. The alliance of nations under the leadership of God are forming. It could be a while longer. This could be just the beginning stages of their alliance here. But things are heating up, and it could happen at any time. This is a serious time in history. If you do not know Christ, get to know Him today. Ask Him to come into your heart, to forgive you of your sins, and to cleanse you, and to fill you with His Spirit. So may the Lord bless you and keep you. And until next time, keep looking up. Bye-bye.